All right, it's a Wednesday edition of Pro Football Talk Live. Peter King, Chris Sims, Mike Florio here with you. And Chris Sims yesterday on his Unbuttoned podcast with Paul Burmeister did something that is sufficiently fun enough to make its way into the top of this hour, and that is an effort in redrafting the top 10 from 2016. We talked earlier about the 2017 redraft that Chris did, so now he's working his way back. Chris, I don't know how many years you're going to go back. I suggest you go all the way back to the year that Phil was drafted. One a week every year, and let's see where Phil ended up in the top 10 in the year that he was picked. But this is interesting, and there's some names that jump out at me, not because they're there, but because they're not there. But let's start at the very top. And hello, everyone out there who's enjoying the program as we start a new hour, our friends in the UK and in Ireland. I haven't said hello to you all in a while. I apologize for that, but we are thinking of you, and we are with you, and we are glad that you are with us. Now, look at the very top. Carson Wentz, Dak Prescott. Chris, I'll let you defend yourself here, because I think many people would say that it should go Dak Prescott, then Carson Wentz. What caused you to put Wentz atop of Prescott?
Well, listen, you know this. I like both a lot. I do. They're both phenomenal football players. They're both top 10 quarterbacks in the NFL right now. I think they're both in that conversation of somewhere between 6 and 10 in the NFL, depending on who you talk to and what their opinion is. I would probably say Carson Wentz. Carson Wentz to me is just a more physically gifted player than Dak Prescott. And I don't say that demeaning Dak Prescott. He's got an amazing physical ability too. But, hey, 2017, I still would have gave my vote to Carson Wentz, even though he missed the last 3 games of the year. He should have been the MVP of football that year. You saw what he did last year with nobody around him and really putting the team on his shoulders on a weekly basis and got that Philadelphia Eagles team with a bunch of people where, Mike, you and I and Peter are in the business where we were watching games going, wait, who the hell is this guy? Where did he come from? I don't even know him. So that, to me, is why I would say Carson Wentz is just a notch better than Dak Prescott.
Peter, who would you have taken first?
I would have taken Dak Prescott. I would have had Chris Jones 2 and DeForest Buckner 3, and then I would have gone with Wentz. A couple of thoughts. I think when you do these drafts, which are always fun to do, but when you do these drafts, I take into account injury. And, okay, so 2 of the guys in Chris's top 10, I would have in the top 10, but I'd have them both lower than Chris has. And that's Joey Bosa and Carson Wentz. Carson Wentz has missed 13 games in his first 4 years. I'm trying to be fair with Wentz and Bosa because when they play, they're both tremendous talents. But to me, Bosa has missed parts of 2 seasons also. So that has to play a role in, and I really wonder, like, for instance, what would I have done if given the choice right now after 4 years, Yannick Ngakoue or Joey Bosa? And again, Bosa on his best day is better. But if he's going to miss a bunch of time, I mean, you have to factor that in.
Yeah, that's a fair point, Peter.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. And we don't know how injuries would have played out differently in a different team. But you've got Bosa, Chris, going to the Chargers, so it's apples to apples because that's exactly where he landed. As I go farther down the list, I see Jalen Ramsey at number 4 ahead of Tyreek Hill at number 5. Look, Tyreek Hill would have been picked a lot. He would have been picked a lot higher than round 5 if he didn't have the off-field issues. But now that we've seen what he can do, I don't know how you keep him behind Jalen Ramsey, because even though Ramsey started strong, just like Peter says, Chris, you've got to factor in the injuries. I think you have to factor in the pain in the butt factor as well, where Jalen Ramsey forced his way out of the team that drafted him. If you use that 4th overall pick on him, are you setting yourself up for that same outcome where you would have to trade him, whereas with Tyreek Hill, you keep him around long-term like the Chiefs have?
Well, yeah, listen, I didn't go that deep down the wormhole, but I mean, you're right. You make some valid points there. We could also sit here and argue that, hey, it seems like everybody in Jacksonville liked Jalen Ramsey except for one guy, and that guy's not there anymore. So maybe that guy was a little bit of the problem too. And you know who I'm talking about. That is Tom Coughlin. But very close. I mean, you're right. I mean, listen, I sat here and was going, man, Jalen Ramsey, Tyreek Hill, You know the one reason I took Jalen Ramsey? I mean, Jalen Ramsey from get-go was asked and supposed to be like in the conversation for best corner in football. And he's pretty much answered that. Last year was not his best year, but of course, yeah, he had to move teams, and he still helped out that Rams defense when he went there. And I think the other thing that gave me the nudge a little bit is I don't think I've seen anybody defend Tyreek Hill better than Jalen Ramsey. And since Tyreek Hill's jumped on the scene, I mean, Jalen Ramsey, the past 2 seasons, has given Tyreek Hill some issues when he covers him man-to-man. I think he's the best at covering him in the whole sport.
You know,
Peter, who
the
would
only
you
other
take
comment
between
I'd
the two?
make about I'd definitely take Tyreek Hill because of the pain in the rear end factor. I almost said it.
But wait, you guys are like,
the other
Tyreek Hill's
thing I
not
would
a
say
pain in the rear? Like, Tyreek Hill's a Boy Scout now? Did we forget last offseason? Like, he's not a pain in the rear?
There was nothing ever came of that. Nothing ever came of that.
You're right.
Nothing ever
Okay.
came of that. No charges were filed. Nothing ever came of that. Don't get me in trouble again, Chris. Nothing
I'm
ever
just
happened
saying
with
it's
that.
a pain in the rear. He still was a pain, whether the charges happened or not. He was still a pain in the Chiefs' butt last year. That's all I'm saying. Sorry to cut you off, Peter. I didn't mean to.
Yeah. But the only other point I would make is that, you know, NFL teams want several things out of a draft, okay? In my opinion, in the first round. They want sure things, and they want sure things at important positions. Okay, there are 2 left tackles in this draft. You know, Laramie Tunsil particularly, and obviously Ronnie Stanley. Ronnie Stanley, you're talking about a Boy Scout, that's him. You know, with the
Right.
Ravens, they've got their left tackle for the next decade. So I tend to want to go more with sure things, which is why I want DeForest Buckner high. I want Chris Jones high. I want Dak Prescott high. And listen, you put him in here, and I would put him 1 and 1A with Tyreek Hill, and that's Michael Thomas. I realize he doesn't have the speed and the game-breaking ability, but he is the most competitive SOB, and also the guy who every day wakes up and says, I'm getting better today. That's what I want on Sunday, and that's what I want on Monday through Saturday also. That's why Michael Thomas is right there at number 6 or 7 in my top 10.
Yeah, and I like the fact that Michael Thomas is the second receiver off the board because he'll still be pissed off that he wasn't the first receiver taken. He's already fueled by the fact that he wasn't a first rounder, and my God, guys like Laquan Treadwell were taken before him. But yeah, he'd still have he'd have that chip on his shoulder, manufactured or otherwise, if he's second off the board behind Tyreek Hill, even though Tyreek Hill has been good. All right, let's talk about some of the guys who aren't on the top 10, and let's start with the guy who was the number 1 overall pick, the player for whom the Rams traded up to get in that move with the Titans to secure Jared Goff. He's off the list. He's gone, even though he's got that gigantic contract, which in the Rams' eyes validates the decision to go get Jared Goff. Chris, why do you not have him among your top 10 in a quarterback-driven league?
Well, yeah, I mean, you know, hey, listen, the Rams, they're sold on Jared Goff. Let's just say they also negotiated against themselves in that contract. They were like, hey, Jared, you want 30? And Jared was like, no. And they're like, okay, how about 32? And no. Hey, how about 33 and a half? Sure, we'll give it to you. So that's like a common trend in the NFL right now. But, you know, Jared Goff, again, to me, is a good football player. And again, I hate this. I don't want to talk negative about the guy all the time because I think people think I'm a Jared Goff hater. But to me, he epitomizes this era we're in right now where we just go, oh, the team's good. The quarterback must be one of the best quarterbacks in football. No, absolutely not. Jared Goff is a good football player. He's a middle-of-the-road starting quarterback in football. I don't think he's going to be in my top 16 in football. Last year, he was either number 18 or 19 on my list when I really got down into it. And, you know, it goes back to the same old thing with me. You know, Mike, you've heard me in how I evaluate quarterbacks. Jared Goff, it's about what's there to be had. And when there's nothing there to be had, what do you do with it? And to me, you know, he's a good player. He's got a lot of things to be successful in the NFL. But a lot of his success is dependent on Sean McVay's ability to stress a defense out with his scheme and find completions for him. He gets a lot of silver platter completions, especially his first few years with McVay. Last year we saw people caught up to McVay's offense a little bit, and we saw big-time strugglesville in a lot of games with Jared Goff because he's just not the type of physical talent like a Prescott or a Wentz to when the play does break down and things aren't there to where they can still make big things happen because they have the physical ability to carry their offense or their team that way.
Peter, would you have put Jared Goff in the top 10?
No, I would not. Although a year ago you might have, and a year from now you might, if you did.
Right.
But I think Jared Goff was a lot better when he had an effective and uninjured Brandon Cooks and Sammy Watkins, because those are legitimate field stretchers. And Chris is absolutely right. This was a team that, when it was at its peak offensively, was scheming the heck out of what they were doing on offense with Sean McVay. And then I think the league caught up a little bit with them. I remember that Thursday night game, not that you're going to want to talk about this, Mike, but the Thursday night game against the Vikings, where he made 2 deep throws in the first half. I think it was like a 55-yard TD to Brandon Cooks right in his hands, one step into the end zone. It was utterly beautiful. And that is what you can do when you've got good, effective, legitimate speed. And that is what, to me, the Rams are going to be looking for this year.
And with Jared Goff, I look at the Bears at number 9. Now, look, DeForest Buckner at number 9, you got to take him. But when you consider what the Bears did the next year in trading up to get Mitchell Trubisky, I don't think either guy's the answer, but I think Goff at 9 in 2016 would have been a hell of a lot better, and that's an understatement, than Trubisky at number 2 the next year. But I think the Bears would have been sorely tempted to take Goff if he was there at number 9. They were getting toward the end of their run with Jay Cutler. No running backs in the top 10 here, Chris.
Yeah.
Ezekiel Elliott off altogether. And look, the guy had a huge impact right out of the gates. Why? And he had 1,300 yards last year, even though we believe he was in a down year. 1,300 yards is not a down year. Why is he not in your top 10?
Well, he's really good. Derrick Henry's not in my top 10 either. And, as I sat there and did the list, I couldn't believe I didn't put them in there either. Now, I think a little bit is like the devaluing of the running back position to a degree. But I think really the big factor is, and, you guys have hit on it, this top 10 list, or, that's basically what I do. Like, I'm not going back into 2016 and getting in the weeds of team needs or anything. This is more or less like how I looked at it, as like the top 10 players from the draft that year. But the biggest thing is, I think the running back position, the devaluing of that, and, they both have had a few so-so years in their career, but more importantly, these top 10 players are really freaking good. I mean, they're at the top of the league in their position groups as well, just like Derrick Henry and Ezekiel Elliott, but I think there's more value at these positions maybe than the running back position.
I'm no Coughlin. I'm no Gettleman. I am not taking a running back in the top 10, period. End of story.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter who he is. I would much rather look where Derrick Henry went 45 in this draft. Here's a question.
Right.
What's better? Taking Derrick Henry at 45, taking Ezekiel Elliott at 4 or 5, or Saquon Barkley at 2. You do not take running backs in the top 10.
Yeah, unless you think it's going to be Barry Sanders, Adrian Peterson, Emmitt Smith, an all-time great. I mean, I think that's the only time I would do it. And how do you know? How do you know that you are getting a guy
Where
who
was
is
Emmitt
going
Smith
to be,
taken, though?
He was a top 20 pick, something like that. He was a first rounder.
I think
but my
it was
point
right
is,
around 20,
unless you're confident you are getting an all-time great. That's why I had hesitation about the Panthers taking Christian McCaffrey at number 8, and they didn't use him very much as a rookie. It's like, how are you use the 8th overall pick on somebody who's going to be on the field and take a running back later if you're not going to put the guy out there? You've got to use him to justify that placement. I mean, the Jaguars with Leonard Fournette, the Bears get all the heat for not taking Patrick Mahomes or Deshaun Watson. The Jaguars, Chris, as you said, they clung to Blake Bortles in 2017 when they could have had Mahomes or Watson. Now they got to deal with Watson twice per year, and they got to deal with Mahomes for playoff positioning and postseason clashes if and when the Jaguars ever make it back there. So, look, I am only taking that running back in the top 10 if I am damn sure he's going to be a transcendent talent who is headed to the Hall of Fame. Now, Saquon Barkley may get there, and I think that's why the Giants did it, but you better be confident, beyond confident, that that's who you're getting. Any other names, Chris, that you struggled with who got left out of this top 10 who you think maybe could have made it in?
Well, I don't, Yannick Ngakoue, to what Peter said. I mean, again, the pass rusher, a guy that can come off the edge and get after the quarterback. We know how important that is in the NFL. Jack Conklin was in the running there for a little bit. The other names that jumped off to me, and again, I don't think they were, Xavier Howard of the Miami Dolphins. He's one of the better corners in football. He wasn't healthy last year, so people kind of forget him. But, of course, the Dolphins made him one of the highest paid at that position. And then, hey, Miles Jack, Deion Jones, just to throw out two other names who deserve just some credit for what they did out of that 2016 class. I mean, Miles Jack and Deion Jones are two of the best middle linebackers in the game. And they were one of those guys that were just on the outside looking in on this.
And you know what? The bottom line is this. When we've got guys taken in the top 10, when you carry that title into the NFL, that can affect you. And for some of the guys who ended up being great, Michael Thomas, the extra drive he got from not being a first-round pick, I feel like that's part of who he became. And I'd love to see how he would have developed and how all these guys would have developed, especially the ones who are motivated by the fact that they didn't get drafted as highly as they would have liked to. Is that a real factor in your mind, Peter, that if a guy falls down the board and turns that into extra motivation, that if he ends up being a top 10 pick, maybe he doesn't have that additional drive?
I mean, I think that clearly has been the case with Michael Thomas. Obviously, it was the case with Tom Brady. But I think, Mike, almost every person who gets drafted, let's go back to Chris Sims's year. Every person who gets drafted thinks he got drafted too low. Every one, unless you're pick number 1 overall. And so everybody's going to have that chip on the shoulder. The question is, what are you able to do with that? What can you do with that? And what do you do with that? And those are the things that I think really matter.
Mike, it's definitely real. When you're drafted, when you're drafted first round and you go to an organization, they roll out the red carpet. They tell you how great they are. They want you to be great because, of course, it's their pick and it was an important pick. And there's a lot of scrutiny and analyzing around it. The second, third, fourth, fifth round pick, that guy, he wakes up every morning getting ready for football or practice or OTAs going, man, they cheated me. I should have been a first-round pick. The guy who got drafted in the first round, he's waking up every morning going, man, I'm the man. I can't wait to go to work. And it's a very real aspect in a player's mind and motivation.
Yeah, and I think that is the key. There are some first-round picks who aren't upset that they weren't drafted higher. They are allowing themselves to believe they've arrived when they really haven't arrived, and maybe they don't have that same drive that they would have if they truly were upset. And that's the challenge. That's the competitive drive. We see it play out every Sunday night when we see new episodes of The Last Dance, the things Michael Jordan did to constantly motivate him. You either have that or you don't. And you can find motivation in anything or you can't. And you'll make stuff up if you have to, like Michael Jordan did when he claimed LeBradford Smith said, "Nice game, Mike," to him when he actually didn't. And Jordan knew he didn't, but Jordan made himself think he did just to give himself motivation for the next night. It's amazing what the human brain can do when you're looking for motivation. But, and I guess that's the point. Michael Thomas, even if Michael Thomas had been the first overall pick, he'd have found a way to be upset about it. They didn't call me soon enough. They should have used only 30 seconds of time, not 9 minutes of time on the clock. How dare they not recognize? They should have signed me to a contract before the draft even began, whatever it may be. But the true great ones will find that motivation in anything or nothing at all.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.